What lies at the intersection of science, art, language, and athleticism? At the confluence of Lao and American culture, Krysada Panusith Phounsiri, or Binley, as he's known, is an accomplished breakdancer, award-winning poet, artist, and physicist. From his early days in Laos to the Las Vegas stage, Binley is writing his story with every dance move, photograph, and engineering breakthrough. It's a story being retold through poetry, preserved for future generations as art, and most importantly, inspiring a new generation to do the same.
What's going on, man? How you doing? Long time no see.
Man. Yeah. Yeah, it's
man,
time.
I've been following you, man. You've been doing like fucking really well. Like like real good. So kind of wanted to get on and just kind of have you share your adventure, your journey with us,
Oh yeah, thanks, man. It's been tough for sure, but tough for everybody,
Yeah.
Given the past few years and
yeah. Well, we met in 2014, right? Was it 2014, 2015? 2014, I think.
2014?
Or 15.
Probably like eight plus years ago.
Do they still have that? Do they still do that every year or so?
No. They stopped after Seattle.
Okay,
in 2017.
John, we're talking about the Lao American Writers Poets Summit that we met at. I was asking if we're still doing that.
Yeah, you're telling me that you guys met there. That's great. And the funny thing about this, Krysada, not sure exactly where you lived in San Diego, but I saw you graduated from East Lake High, and I lived like a couple blocks from there for about 9 years back in the 2000s. So we were probably just about neighbors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
What brought you out here?
I'm in Chicago now. I'm a native of California. So what brought me out here Causeway is the better question, but came out here for work. Been here since 2014. So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And we had another guest on, a pickleball guy, Matthew Nola, who used to live in Otay Ranch. So right there too, in the same vicinity over there. So three of us were all probably neighbors, probably ran into each other at Lao New Year or whatever, or at the grocery store. But
I had been Lao New Year for sure.
That one was huge. San Diego, there's so many people, thousands of people.
We had to have at least like 4 just to meet like the needs of the community.
Yeah, each temple will like Wat Skyline would have their own, and then like they'd have the big like San Diego White Community one at a park or at that big place over there off Euclid that I don't know if they still do it there, but it was a big dirt lot once and they held it in this rocky dirt. We could barely walk one year. Then they like fixed it all up nice the next year.
Yeah, that was we stopped doing that and then we moved it back to the temple. So
okay. Well, good. Well, hey man, it's an honor to have you on. You've done a lot of cool stuff. We're really honored to talk to you tonight. So Ko's going to kick off the show here and we'll get rolling.
Hey man, real quick, do you like being called Binley or Krysada? Is there a preference?
No preference. I go by everything. So Binley, Krysada, Lancer. It's my dance name. There's a lot of different nicknames.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay, cool. All right, man. John, let's get started.
Yep, let's roll.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of C4 Podcast, Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement Through Adversity. My name is Coach Chandetka. I'm here with my co-host, John Messina. If you haven't already, please like the C4 Podcast page, our Lao American Sports Hall of Fame page. And we're also on Instagram, Lao American Sports. We have an amazing guest today, not an athlete in the traditional sense, but definitely an artist, right? So without further ado, I am going to have John introduce him to you guys.
Yeah, so today we have Krysada Panusith Phounsiri. Welcome to the show. Goes by many names. Binley, Lancer's your dance name. We're really honored to have you on. Before we jump into the interview, though, we need to give a few shout outs. Just want to thank everybody from Wisconsin who's been following the show. We see a growing audience there. So folks in Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Eau Claire, Wausau. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Co. You're the former Wisconsin guy.
You got Eau Claire right. It's Eau Claire.
Okay. Wausau, and Appleton.
Wausau. Yes, Wausau.
Yeah, Wausau. Sorry, Appleton. We see a lot of people from there. And Wichita, Kansas. A lot of people from Wichita. So shout out to the folks in Wichita. And speaking of Wichita, if you're passing through the area or you live there, please be sure to stop by the brand new Mochi Nut Donut Shop in Wichita. It is owned by the one and only Matthew Nola, aka the Pickleball Mochi Donut King now. We interviewed him back in episode 25, along with our other buddy Noy, the other pickleball guy. So stop in, say hi to Matthew, get yourself a mochi donut, boba drinks, ice cream. We just wanted to give a shout out. Small business owner, getting started there with him and his wife running that shop. So please support him and them. So today we're going to jump into the interview with Krysada. So Krysada, you were born in Laos. Kind of interesting because you're a little bit of a latecomer. Like all of my family, like my wife's family came in, after the 75 war ended and, early 80s type of thing. Co was here in 75. But tell us about your immigration from Laos, your early years, where you were born, and kind of how you got here, and your years early growing up in San Diego.
Yeah, they would call me the 1.5 or closer to age 1.7 or 8 generation. I was born in Laos, Hue Sai, Bokeo, born in 88. We moved to America when I was less than like 2 years old, so we moved in at some point in 1989. My aunts and my uncles were refugees, so they a lot of my mom's side escaped through Nong Khai refugee camp and all the other camps during the war. A lot of family stayed behind, but long story short, they collected their money. We all gathered our money, did a one-way ticket over here and never came back, kind of thing. So we did our own little escape, but just not through the traditional refugee route.
So I got to ask, because we have some family from that same region, and they're a Tai Lu in Tai Nua. Are you guys Tai Lu?
Yeah, I'm part Lu. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because that area,
portion of my family.
Okay, that area I think has a lot of Lu people, right, up there in the north, by Myanmar, by the border of Thailand and all that. So.
Yep. So a lot of my family is Lu, so that makes me Lu, and then my dad is born in a village outside of Luang Prabang. So he was raised in Luang Prabang. So I always say I rep Luang Prabang and Bokeo equally.
Okay, we have a Lu temple, well, about an hour from us in Rockford. I don't know if you've been there, Co, but we've been there for some family type things. And things.
You're talking about the Rockford temple?
There's one of the temples in Rockford.
There's another
a Lu
one.
temple.
Okay,
there's a Lu temple and there's a traditional Lao temple.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Yeah. So anyway,
wow,
but that is kind of cool little fun.
Totally. Yeah, totally representing both groups.
Yeah, and I could barely speak Lao and understand Lao when I go to the Lu temple. It's like it's similar. You can pick up words, but it's different. Yep.
Yeah. Similar and different. That's exactly how you would describe it. Just different ethnicity.
Yeah. Well, tell us about growing up in San Diego. So you landed there, big Lao community. Great city. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
It's currently I'd say it's the 6th largest in terms of San Diego. The Wat Lao Buddharam, I believe, was the first Buddhist temple that was in America, I would say, or if not, then one of the very earliest. So obviously, with a lot of Lao communities, we gravitate towards the temple, right, as both a religious site, but also a community center where we could get the food that we want, get the latest news, get the community, right? Like everyone kind of living together. So I grew up in Southeast San Diego, mainly Market Street. So we called Wat Lao Buddhalam the Market Temple. That's the nickname for it.
Wat Market and Wat Skyline,
Yeah. So growing up in Southeast, a lot of it was just discovering the nature of the neighborhoods and the hoods. I was learning English and speaking Lao at home, like early on, trying to figure out who I was as a person and identity, trying to learn my family history at a very young age, but quite ignorant, to be honest. just trying to learn, right? But obviously with our families, we tend to not speak upon those things until folks get older. But I was a skater, man. I used to love playing in the streets. Skateboarding was my main passion. School definitely was not, but I love learning. I just felt like early on I struggled a little bit with reading, especially, right? But I eventually fell in love with writing and physics and whatnot. But we'll get into that later. But growing up in San Diego, especially in Southeast, we didn't have much. The struggles were quite apparent. We lived in a community that was, quite underserved, under-resourced. A lot of gangs, a lot of violence, a lot of immigrant communities kind of living together, usually peacefully, but oftentimes there's a lot of gang violence in our community, that kind of stuff. But I would also say there was a lot of beauty to it as well, and that needs to be highlighted because I think I grew up learning a lot of lessons, creating something from nothing kind of mentality, and seeing the appreciation of our family love and our community love. So,
Krysada, you mentioned identity. I mean, was there one particular way you were leaning? Were you leaning because you were so young, growing up in the States? Did you see yourself as American, or were you still holding on, let's say, to did you have a lot of Laotian friends, or who did you predominantly like? How do you identify, and who did you see yourself, hanging out with growing up as a kid?
I say I identified with everything. So it'd be Lao, Lu, American.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because a large portion of my side of my family, again, was Lu. So I was involved in a lot of the Lu ceremonies, the Lu dances, but also in the Lao culture dance. And then the temple at the time, Market Temple, had everybody, right? At one point, like various peoples of Laos, various ethnicities. Mm-hmm. So I always appreciated that. I always loved representing that. But I also knew early on that I was someone odd, especially in school, because where I grew up was mainly like Lao, Black, Mexican, right? Where I went to school in elementary school was mainly Filipino, Black, Mexican. So a lot of the Asians that I grew up with were either Lao or Filipino, if you want to say Asian Pacific Islander.
Yeah,
that was like the main communities that I grew up with. But I learned very early on that just like a lot of stories that people tell, like no one didn't really know what Lao was, right? And the closest thing they could associate was probably Thai, but I always said I was Lao, and I always had to point on the map where Laos was, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I always got to tell people Laos is between Thailand and Vietnam. Right? I mean, if most people know Thailand and Vietnam, like, well, we're right in the middle. So
yeah, I always say like we're right in between, but we're our own peoples, and I always say I'm Lao. But yeah, like I think I took a lot from everything, and I was like prideful of who I was with everything.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. And I mean, the Filipino community is so big in San Diego, in particular the South.
Yep.
And to the county, like the high school you went to, I believe, at least when I lived there, was mainly Filipino, right?
Yep.
Probably the largest group. So my wife, everywhere we went, people would speak Tagalog to her or think I was a Navy guy. And anyway, it's a long story. But
yeah, for sure. Big Navy communities. I grew up with a lot of them, and large Filipino population here, which is awesome too. So
yeah, it is. They're great people. Now, so what's really cool, Ko and I were talking about you've kind of found this intersection between science, art, athleticism, and language, that not many people have found. And these are not things that people tend to go together, right? You think of the scientist as being in one quadrant and then the artist in another, and then kind of the athlete dancer type, right, in another quadrant.
Yeah.
I mean, help us unpack that, because it's really unique. Tell us how you got into all of these disciplines that are typically thought as opposites.
I I believe it started since I was a kid, quite curious of the world and where I was, and seeing a lot of the differences and uniqueness of my family community, where I was, what I was learning, what I was struggling with, and what I was trying to unpack. And I think the idea of like believing and seeing that there is a whole world of things that I didn't know, really, and it truly intrigued me. So, for example, like when I got into skating, right, I was always using my body, like to express myself, like from trying to copy Bruce Lee, from watching all the Bruce Lee movies, watching kung fu movies, to skating on the streets, trying to do like all the best tricks and challenging people. So like in terms of like bodily movement, even before dancing, I always loved to express myself in movement. In language was a funny thing to me because again, like early on, because I was speaking multiple or at least two languages. And here's the catch. I was speaking Lao with a Lu accent. So then it was even harder. So even now people confuse my accent because I don't have the Tai Meng Luang accent like my dad does, right? But so I kind of speak my own language. So that was like a struggle there in terms of like my own community's language. And then in English too, where I sucked at reading or writing. And then I was like, okay, whatever. But math was good for me, but I wanted to like conquer these things because I felt like the more I learned, the more I could appreciate and see the world, right? And see the world for what it was. And then with physics was the same thing. Once I started reading books in physics, watching cartoons that showed in a funny way, but showed like concepts of physics, I just got really intrigued. And I always looked to space as a source of inspiration. Like whenever I felt lost or whenever I felt like I needed something to look forward to, I would look up in space because I always thought that space was such a vast and wonderful thing. So it really stemmed from curiosity, and then from there, I had to ask myself, like, how does this all connect with me, right? Like, how does this truly connect with me? Because I think that all of them give me a sense of feeling alive and give me a sense of understanding. Like, I don't know everything, but I think learning and falling in love with different aspects of my life made things more connected on a physical and spiritual level. So that's how I kind of was curious about so many things and obsessing myself with it.
I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. How many siblings? Do you come from a big family? How many siblings did you have, and like where did you land?
So growing up, my immediate is I have an older sister and a younger brother that I grew up with. And then from my mom's side, the main side of the family that moved over here was my mom's side, but they had 5 kids between them, I believe, five, six, but one of the families was is back in Bokeo, Hoi Sai, but like 5 came over here with a bunch of cousins. So then that side has a bunch of we have a huge family that we all grew up with. We all stuck together. So it wasn't just like my older sister and younger brother. It was like all my cousins, and there's like, I mean, probably like 10 plus. And we were all around this, like a similar age range, but it spanned like from like 15 years from the youngest to the oldest, I would say. And I was like around the middle. So my immediate family and the larger group.
Well, the reason why I asked is like, because you're interested in so many different things, right? What type of support or encouragement do you get from your parents, from your siblings? I mean, you mentioned like being the oddball, right? And like, how did they like support you, or in these all different activities you're doing? You're doing science, you're dancing, you're skateboarding, and skateboarding is not a traditional Laotian activity, right? Now like, well, Pat Chinita, right, John Pat Chinita's a pro skateboarder, but you usually don't hear about, like most Laotian kids are playing soccer, right? At a very young age with a group of friends. So here you are kind of doing, the skateboarding, which I'm going to guess that not too many Laotians were doing with you.
No. So that inspiration came from one of my cousins, Holiday. His name is Holiday. He was like, in terms of someone that I looked up to as a bigger brother.
Mhm.
He got me into skating, and then I just got obsessed with it. And the thing with skating is, yeah, it costs money to buy a board and some shoes, but that's it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's it. So then the rest is like, you go out there and you better learn something, and you train and you practice, and that's what I did. And for example, like sports programs, like it was hard for my parents as it was. Like they ran their own businesses and they worked like 7 days a week. Even then, trying to make their ends meet, it was like it made no sense to pay for a sports program, you
Mhm.
know, and I didn't want to burden them with that. So I think they were, obviously scared with skateboarding because broken bones and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, but that luckily blessed that that didn't happen. I mean, I fell a lot, but and then like with breaking, it was just like as soon as I got into breaking, I just absolutely fully dedicated myself to it, fell in love with it, and it was a path that I took that I fell in love with, and then with my little brother, he also started learning because I taught him early on, but also in my neighborhood, the people that I grew up in the neighborhood, they also kind of looked at me as a big bro, so I kind of wanted to inspire them to get them off the streets per se, or like
Yeah.
get their minds off the everyday struggles that we grew up on, and have them focus on a passion. And then my family at first was like, oh, like we didn't really understand it, but I was like, hey, don't worry about that, because if I hold on to my grades, or if I studied good enough, or I did what I needed to do, then no one could say anything, right? I was always like, I always had to back myself up before I could uh, give myself permission to do the things I did. So it was kind of like, all right, well, if I could hold this down, then I definitely can do this, and no one could stop me because I'm still like
Yeah.
keeping my end.
That's
So
definitely a great way to look at it, because, academics is so important to, the Laotian parents or the Laotian family, so
yeah,
I can see where they really couldn't say, much as long as you're keeping your grades. But I do see the concern, right, that, especially mothers being concerned about, skateboarding and then falling and then breaking bones and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
So I wanted to play football, but that was a no because, that was a no-go because it's just, no.
Yeah. So
I couldn't convince them to let me play football, so I never got to.
yeah, then I just started to like just like the things that I loved, like I didn't want to follow trends. And I think I was I'm a feely kind of artist too. So if it feels dope to me, if it feels something like that I'm alive and doing, then I have to jump into it. And that's what I did with like everything I do, right? My parents too, it was also like I you know they're working, they're doing everything they can to support us. But in terms of education too, like I didn't really have anyone to look up to. I didn't have that kind of support going into like middle school and high school. I really had to pick up a lot of things on my own, but I felt like that kind of mindset happened since I was a kid anyway. Not that I didn't have help. I'm just saying like it definitely didn't come from um, your traditional places that you would expect.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how did you get into the breaking? Was it the neighborhood influences, MTV? What kind of drew you to it?
So at first, my cousin Steven, he was teaching my sister, me, and his younger brother how to do handstands. Like, oh, it's breakdancing, right? It's breakdancing, and he would show some stuff, and then I would do it as a kid, like just trying to. I would learn handstands, but I never really thought much of it because I was like already heavy into skating as a kid. But what happened was I would see, I wouldn't call it subliminal, but they were just there. Like when I would go to the mall, I would see breaking videos, like really awesome, dope breaking videos. I was like, oh wow, so there's still a scene, like people are still breaking, and then I would still see it more and more. And then uh, we didn't have internet back then, early on. So what I would do was like I would skate to Malcolm X Library, which is near my mom's shop at the time in Southeast. And when I would go there, I would go up on the internet and just type up like breaking, like breakdance. What are some of the moves? What's some of the vocabulary? And then from there, I started telling my friends. This is already in middle school. I was like, oh, I'm getting interested in like breaking. And then my buddy, would let me. Uh, he would lend me his VHS tapes so I could watch because he was like, "Oh, my uncle is really dope at breaking. You should watch it." And he, his uncle and his crew definitely was. And then then I would buy videos at the mall. And then like it was just this whole like thing that was converging, right? And then once I got internet at home, I started downloading videos for myself. And the one thing that absolutely got me hooked was not just the skills, but also the music. The music really got me into falling in love with breaking in general. Because again, back then I used to express myself. I used to love like even listen to Michael Jackson, like all his hits and dancing. I was like, oh, Billy, do the Michael Jackson stuff, you know, or like do all the whatever. But like it was, and growing up doing Lao cultural dance as well. Like I think music was always embedded in my like upbringing, whether it was like rock music, rap music, like all the genres. And then when breaking came out with like funk music and break beats, and I was like, wow, I can't believe people are like dancing like this. This is amazing. And that's how I really fell in love. And that's how I really caught on. And then from there, I just couldn't get away from it. I just got obsessed and wanted to train and wanted to learn every move. Asked my dad to buy me VHS tapes on how to break tutorials and whatnot. You know, it was all VHS days too. So, and then from there, I just taught myself based on watching these videos, and then from there, I taught a lot of people in my neighborhood, and then we just started practicing in the front yard, and the rest is history.
I think VHS
It's
tape and a
amazing.
piece of linoleum. That's all you needed, right?
Yeah, we literally bought linoleum and puzzle
John,
mats.
Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, John. I mean, we grew up with breakdancing. It was popular in the mid '80s, right? When we were teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it faded. It faded away. And then when I heard it was coming back, like Binley, you're saying like early 2000s, right? When you were kind of getting into
Yeah.
it, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear like breakdancing's coming back. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, you know, the music, the clothes that they wore, you know, everybody had a certain everybody they go some, you know, I always bring a thing called cardboard, you know.
Yeah.
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 Cardboard or
It was
linoleum.
yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right,
that was,
Co.
yeah,
Go ahead.
the 80s was when it really went mainstream with breaking. So like breaking was a cultural thing in New York in the 70s, and it kind of grew, and then the 80s was when it really exploded to, you know, the world with all the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was really inspired by a lot of stuff happening in the 80s, and then 90s in San Diego. The 90s in San Diego was a really heavy like gangster era, you know.
Yep.
So a lot of the youth were like in whatever sets they were in. Not everybody, but if it wasn't gangs, it was in racing culture. People were just into like import cars. So like there was already fads and trends happening and things going on. So even in the 90s, breaking in particularly in San Diego, if you weren't already involved in the scene, there was already heavy stuff in San Diego in the 80s and 90s with breaking, but I didn't know, right? So everyone in my area was like, dude, breaking's dead. They're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, even with me, like when I started like early 2000s, right? So it was always like, oh, breaking's dead, breaking's dead, breaking's dead. But sure enough, here it is. It's about to be in the Olympics next year. So
Oh, really?
2024. Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
tell us more about that. What have you heard?
So it will officially be part of the 2024 Olympics, like the Olympics in Paris. There's a lot of organizations globally that are working with different committees and really working to legitimize the competition aspect of breaking. And it first happened at the Youth Olympics Games in Buenos Aires, I believe. If I recall correctly, it was 2018 when they did the Youth Olympics, and they incorporated breaking as kind of like a test. Like if it's successful here, we could really implement a system for breaking in the Olympics. So it's a long process, and the first year this is going to happen is next year, and there's a lot of organizations involved, a lot of committees, a lot of qualifiers, especially this year because it's 2023 this year. Everyone's going to try to figure out ways to do qualifiers for it. And yeah, I'm really excited to see that it made its way to the Olympics.
Is that something you would, I mean, are you still active as far as competition, or is this like there's something that you would like to pursue?
I was contemplating that in terms of competition, but I would really need to like for me to make my heart feel satisfied about competing like that, I'd have to drop everything, like,
Yeah.
and just fully focus on being a b-boy at this point, which is quite difficult.
I've seen your resume. It's like you won everything else. This would be kind of be like the what is it? The topping, or what's that saying, John?
Icing on the cake.
Icing on the cake. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to be realistic with myself too, that there are a lot of active competitors in the US where we're a really strong scene. There's a lot of solid dancers, a lot of them younger than me, and a lot of them completely focused on this. And I feel like I would love to be involved in some way or another, but I'm also happy if it just happens, like, and I could just watch it. Because to be real with myself, even for the past 3 years with the pandemic, like, I really had to sit down and ask myself, like, I've done, like, I've been dancing for 21 years, like,
wow.
Training consistently, competing, traveling, performing everywhere around the world. And, with the pandemic, when it put stuff in a pause, I had to say, like, all right, well, what is it that I really want to do now? Like, I've done all the competitions, right, as much as I can, and I'm still competing, but to do like the pro breaking tour circuits, and to do, like, let's say, the Olympic qualifiers, now it's another level of dedication. And when I mean that, I mean, it's like, you might as well, you should be dropping your job and training. Because like, we train, a lot of these dancers train, we train in unique ways, but it's athlete stuff too. Like, we're really pushing our physical limits of our bodies, but also trying to be creative and do original movement in the art aspect. So it's like art and athleticism, and to be at that level, you got to truly dedicate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, is there a breaking culture in Laos that you know of?
Yep.
Okay. We'll talk offline, because we kind of have a program we're working on with them to develop a lot of sports and bring a lot of athletes to various games, and
awesome.
developing a Lao team, helping them get up to speed is something that possibly would be more realistic in the cards for you. They could.
Yeah. I totally love to give back to the scene out there. I've judged competitions out there, taught workshops, connected with the leaders in the community too. Funny enough, I it's not set in stone, but I plan on being in Vietnam in March to compete, and I haven't hit them up yet, but I want to do a Lao team, because it's a Southeast Asian, it's like a big competition over there. So I was like, hey, we done a Lao team here in the States, like, but we never done one in Southeast Asia. I think that'd be really awesome. Or like having like a Lao American and a Lao, like, connect like that, and then compete in Southeast Asia. I think that hasn't happened before.
Yeah.
But there's a healthy scene out there.
Yeah. So for the SEA Games, we're bringing a contingent of Lao American athletes to compete along with the Lao national team from Laos. So it's really, really exciting time. A lot of really cool stuff that we have going on there. But, the sport, how I watch it, everybody looks good. How do you kind of know who won? What are the criteria? How's it judged?
So there's a lot of different eras of judging, and then there's a lot of different styles of judging. And I'm laughing because I think this is where there are challenges with art as subjectivity, and how do we legitimize it for competition, right? So
Ko's a bodybuilder, so he knows subjective sports well, right?
Yeah. See, and respect to you, dude, because like, see, you joined something that was quite unconventional too in what you did. Bodybuilding,
especially at that time.
For sure. So I just gotta highlight that too.
Too many doing it. So and
ain't nobody, barely. So
I got a lot of heat. Like, I got a lot of heat, like, from my family, right? Like, especially from, and I've mentioned this before, like, like from my mother, right? And I look back and it's like, man, like, how different could it have been if I'd gotten a little bit more support, right? But I understand, why she thought the way she thought, because, it's never been done. Like,
sure.
One, you're small in stature, right? and like there's no Asian bodybuilders. There weren't any Asian bodybuilding heroes that I could look up to at that time. So it was hard. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I was like, okay, it's like, man, I'm 5'4", 5'5". He's 6'4". You know, so
being a pioneer is always going to be tough because you don't have that kind of person or someone in your community to look up to. So it is a tough thing, but it's definitely something that should be celebrated. But yeah, so
hopefully I can be that to the newer generation of kids working out like bodybuilding. Talk about like Laos, like bodybuilding's big in Laos now. You know, women are getting into it, right? Women are training, working out. When I was doing it, they would say, "Oh man, you're gross." You know, the women they were disgusted by me. You know, when I had first started working out, and now like, man, women are competing, and we have a few. We have a few Lao American or Lao Canadian women that are professional, you know, the same in the same organization that I turned professional. So it's definitely it's growing.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry. Going back to the judging thing.
Sorry.
Yeah, so my bad. So for the judging, so if you really practice in breaking, you have to understand there are different categories, but not every judging criteria is the same. But I will just break it down. Like, you have your foundation, right? What is the foundation of breaking? You know, you have your top rock. So dancing on top. Are you musical? Do you understand the music, and are you dancing to the music rhythmically? And do you understand how to freestyle with the music up top? Then you have your footwork. So footwork is pretty much the DNA of breaking. I know people see power moves, the dynamics, all the incredible stuff, which is amazing, and it is definitely part of breaking, an integral part of breaking. But footwork is what really truly separates the dance from a lot of other dances, like the patterns and all the intricacies of footwork is very important, and was one of the first things we did as breakers. So top rock footwork, that's foundation. Understanding freezes, how to hold your freezes, creating different shapes and patterns. And then you have your dynamics, which is the power moves and all the amazing stuff. So that's like the general thing, but it gets broken down even more to even more intricate ideas and details. But a lot of times, this is the part where I go back to our part. A lot of times, and then there's this originality aspect, which can truly be taken to different contexts, right? Some people break foundation and they want to go completely abstract, but the cool thing is, like, that's what I love about breaking. You express yourself, and if you really feel like that's what it is, and that's what it is. But when you judge, you often have, let's say, 3 judges at a competition. Let's say 3 for the more local, or like some of the bigger jams, you have 3 judges, and they're just going to pick based on understanding this criteria, understanding the dance, understanding, who's cleaner, who looks stronger, who didn't crash, who had the more powerful, solid rounds, technical rounds, who had the better moments. The judges will just say, judges 3, 2, 1, they'll point towards the side, right? That was oftentimes how it happened. So 3 judges would choose, either it'll be a tie or a 2-1 decision or a unanimous. And then there were so many battles in the history of breaking where people felt like they got robbed. Oftentimes, rightfully so, just like boxing or bodybuilding, there's other, like close, heavy decisions. And oftentimes it was like the judge's call. So sometimes people come like, hey, why did I lose? And then every judge would have a different explanation as to what they were looking for and what they valued too. That's the important part, what they valued in judging, which often leads to a lot of frustration in the scene, right? A lot of frustration in terms of the competition, where people travel a lot, maybe the money's high, or maybe people sacrifice a lot to go to this event, and then they battle, they felt like they won, and then maybe the judges went the other way. That's happened to me a lot. But to be honest too, I'm sure a lot of people felt the same way when I beat them in a battle, and they were close, heated battles, and they felt like they won. So it's like, I understand. But now, given the fact that I'm saying with the way the direction is moving, especially for the Olympics, which still will have this level of subjectivity. Now there were judging systems in the past that try to quantify certain categories. Some of them failed, some of them did better than others, but I think now there's like a unified system that is geared towards the Olympics, and in that we'll have judges who are trained and certified to be judges. So my little brother, he got certified to do this judging system, and I believe they will use that for the Olympics. And what that does is it gives you transparency, so you can give values, but you could also give reasons why. And judges are trained to look at certain things to know and understand what is actually being valued here, right? And then they would do case studies, and they would look at battles where maybe your heart said like this person won, but if you had to use the judging criteria, you would have to say that this person won due to X, Y, Z, right? So not everything is quantified, but to legitimize it even more, they are going towards that route to have a lot more objectivity and a lot more judges trained in it. So not just like another big problem is like sometimes you have your superstar B-boys or B-girls, and they're headlining judges because everyone wants to see them, and they're a judge, but maybe they're whack judges, or maybe they're not even paying attention. You know, like there was a lot of that was happening. So it's like kind of cleaning up. If I still believe that we are an art, breaking is an art. This dance is beautiful. It's not just battles and competitions, it's a culture. But if we want to grow the competition, these are the things we have to do. Otherwise, the audience is going to look and watch like, how did this person, like just how you asked, John, like, how does this person win? What, like, but now it's like, no, here's the documented things. So it's happening and it's growing for sure. And legitimizing.
It's kind of like gymnastics, right? The performance routine. There's the required moves that you got to do, and then you're judged on creativity and originality, and stuff like that. So I mean,
ice skating, gymnastics, it's been done before in the Olympics, so they could do it. It's just probably getting the whole world on the same page, having standards, right? Having qualified judges, and so I assume it'll be an exhibition sport this time. Is that what it'll be?
Exhibition sport?
They usually have exhibition sports in the Olympics. Like the first time, they don't award medals. You go and they call it an exhibition sport. Like skating was that before it became skating. I don't know where they're at with breakdancing, if it's a full-on sport with medals or if it's going to be an exhibition sport. But
I should look that up, but I believe it will be medaled.
Okay.
I believe it will be a medaled. And, but yeah, so the cool thing too is like with the way breaking is going to be in the Olympics. So I've trained a lot with gymnasts at my time at Cal, like with the Cal team and the club team members, and I asked them like, because I wanted to know about judging too, like how do they judge, right? And they have to do a preset routine, and they have to let the judges know the skills and the moves that they're doing beforehand, and then they have to perform it. And then and then there's this other selection criteria process. So you actually get docked, not only for being out of bounds, but if you do stuff outside of the routine that you said you was going to do, the judges can't judge on it. So you get penalized, right? Yeah. So the cool thing with breaking though is we're battling, and the judges have to look at everything. So it's going to be very active. It's going to be quite active. And I believe it's singles. So it's going to be one-on-one. So there's going to be a men's one-on-one solo battle, and then it's going to be women's one-on-one. So there's not going to be crew yet. They wanted to do the solos first because I think a crew thing is going to be way too much to get ready for in terms of putting it into the Olympics. So it'll be one-on-one.
Yeah,
and round robin style, I believe, up until like the top 8 or semis. I don't know I don't know too much, but you'll eventually see a bunch of like interesting solo battles. So
so what have some of your biggest accomplishments in breakdancing? And since your brother was part of your crew for a while, let's give him a shout out and some of his biggest accomplishments as well.
Were
you on America's Got Talent?
We did America's Got Talent with one of our
That's what I thought.
crews, like friend crew San Diego collaborations called Body Poets. So I was in America's Got Talent. My brother and I did Jabberwockies for he did it longer than me, but I did it for a year. So dancing out in Vegas. because a lot of the Jabberwockies, well, they formed in San Diego actually, but they're from different parts of Cali mainly. But they had a show in Vegas, and then we auditioned because some of those dancers are from San Diego, so we had that connection there, and we went out there and auditioned. Like I quit my job to do it. I think that was a beautiful time. But when
How long did you do that for?
I did it for a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did it for a year. But in terms of breaking, this is where I'll list out like, winning Style Elements anniversary. Style Elements is one of the biggest, most historic crews on the planet, but they started from Central Cali. So they're a California crew. They blew up in the 90s. They're part of we call it like the golden era, the 90s era for like originality and West Coast style. Winning their anniversary was a big achievement, I would say, for me, because like I respect that crew so much. Another one is I won a solo competition for R16 USA qualifiers. So R16 was a really big competition that took place in Korea, but I won the USA qualifier. Competing at a Red Bull BC1 twice. Yeah, twice. I didn't do so good, but I competed with the top of the top in the States, being part of top 16. The furthest I went was semifinals in San Diego. That was really dope. And then there's so many competitions in between that. So many in the Bay Area when I was up there at the time, even winning stuff in LA and San Diego. It's hard to pinpoint accomplishments because I don't want to just list out battles. I think the impact is quite important too. So like, and when I say all these competitions, my little brother was definitely part of a lot of those things, like winning Style Elements. We competed at Battle of the Year USA qualifier, doing shows and performing even not just here, but many cities, especially for Lao community events as well. I think the impact that that my brother and I had in San Diego and to our contemporaries in the scene, but also the impact that we had just even now is something that I cherish because I'm quite prideful of where I come from, not only as a Lao American, but as a San Diegan, always love representing. So I looking back at my career, I'm proud of a lot of things. Obviously, I think I'm quite hard on myself. So every time I lose, it irks me and I want to train harder and et cetera, et cetera. I just love this dance, man. Like I love the music. I love moving to the music and inspiring others and expressing language through body movement, So
I've seen your videos, man. I mean, it's like, and I don't really follow it, but there's just something unique about your style, right? You can look. It's like having a physique, right? There's tons of bodybuilders, right? But when you see a guy stand out, like you just know, and you definitely stood out, man. So,
thanks a lot. That means a lot to me because I do try to emphasize originality and being creative, but I try to do it coming from within, like trying to find the things that I want to do and try not to copy others. So if a person that doesn't follow or study this thing says that too, it's almost like, dang, like I'm happy I did my job, like I'm happy I did that because
it's just like some of the things you're physically doing was just like, man, that's crazy. Like the strength that required you to do that movement. I was like, man, like John, you've seen some of his videos, right?
Yeah. It's incredible. So
thanks a lot. It means a lot.
What is it like to work on a Vegas show? Because for the audience out there, Jabberwockies had they may still have it. They had a standing show in Vegas. Like you're in Vegas gambling, you go see the show at night. What's it like to be on the cast of one of those shows?
Yeah, it was an honor. They perform now. They're still performing in Vegas at the MGM. They have a different show. They always have to cycle the shows right through new music and new trends. But I would say, how do I put it? Having my moments on stage whether I did solos or I was part of like highlights of a routine, being on that stage and performing and all that energy and excitement, like you just can't take that away. You can't even quantify it. It was so tough on the body because the show that we did was a dancer show, which means that we were all dancers passionate about the dance and all aspects, not just breaking, just like different forms of dance, and just really putting in that passion, which is awesome, but not sustainable, I would say. So it's tough on the body.
Yeah.
It's like, it is absolutely tough, especially when you're doing like multiple shows every week at the highest caliber. And again, it was a dancer show, which means like we put it up, we put in our all like every week. And I'm not saying that they don't do it now, but what I'm saying is a lot of people got injured, right? Because it's just super high level. So then now, learning to embrace the show's aspects and a better production is actually really good too. More sustainable for the body. You still have really dope, amazing highlight moments, but you're not straining the body. So longevity is key. And throughout that year that I did it, it was amazing. Just living in Vegas was awesome too. I knew that I needed to go back home, like personally, but I gave it my all. The excitement, even your loved ones and people, friends, family coming to see you, just getting the crowd and even celebrities watching you, and like the rush on stage is amazing. And then you have to appreciate all the tough grind physically to do the rehearsals, to be backstage, with your fellow dancers, and they're all going through the same things. It was definitely a journey. It was tough, but rewarding when you felt the energy of the crowd, on stage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's not exactly something you'd think a astrophysicist would do. So step back, and so you went to Berkeley, got a degree in physics and astrophysics. Tell us about that, and kind of what excited you about that field and what you're doing in that field with that.
Yeah. So when I was watching a lot of like old Looney Tunes cartoons, one episode of Foghorn Leghorn, it was a really cool episode about this. There was like this little chick that had to be babysat, right? But that chick knew physics. So was it Foghorn Leghorn? I don't know who the rooster dude is, his name, but he was trying to teach this boy how to be a boy, right? So it's like, here, I'm gonna teach you how to swing a bat, or like, and then this chick would like, you would see physically like write math equations and physics concepts, look at it, and then like swing the bat, and then like, like the speed of a comet going through his stomach. And I was like, oh. And then another one was about like quantum mechanics and like, the whole Schrodinger's cat, like you don't know where like a particle could be there, but it probably isn't there. Like there's a probability that there is, and different dimensions, multi-dimensions and stuff. So in that same episode, like they're playing hide and seek, but this chick was like hiding in a tree. You go to the tree, you end up in a trash can. He goes to the trash can, ends up under a hole in the floor, right? And I was like, there's a science that does this, or there's a science that, speaks upon this. I got really intrigued. On top of, again, looking at space and always falling in love with like the stars and the galaxies and the cosmos, right? And then I read a book called Multi-Dimensions by Michio Kaku in high school. And I think that book solidified my interest in theoretical physics. And then, again, when I grew up, I didn't know where to go for college. I just knew like the default would have been UCSD or San Diego State because I'm from there, right? Or I'm from here. So they're like, oh, these are really good colleges. I didn't really know much about Berkeley. And then until people started saying, oh, that's at the time the #1 public university in the world. I was like, I don't know, but let's just apply, So I had a buddy help me apply. Long story short, I got into Cal after being rejected from many different places. So it wasn't just like I got accepted into everything, but I'm thankful because one thing that got me hesitant about going to Cal was because, at the time I'm 17, 18, right? Never moved out, right? I mean, I traveled, but I never moved out. But the one thing I asked was, I was like, am I still going to be able to dance? Because I really cared about it. I was like, is there a scene up there? Can I still break? Because I don't want to just study. I still don't think I'm a student I'm not that studious. I don't even think I'm that smart. I just, especially going to Berkeley, you definitely feel that way, or I did, right? I felt so dumb. But my buddy gave me a phone call. It was like a 2.5 hour phone call about the scene in the Bay Area. He's from San Diego. His name is Rock Bandit, and he told me about the scene up there, and it intrigued me so much. I was like, well, I'm accepted. I'm gonna go, and this is my ticket to be independent and to live my life in the Bay Area, see the historic scene up there, because it was so historic. It's just that at the time I didn't really know who was who, and then I always wanted to do astrophysics. So going back to the degree, right? I was like, I want to do astrophysics. I had a partner in crime since freshman year, and he also wanted to do astrophysics. And we were kind of, again, certain oddballs. Like I felt like we connected on a different level. So we would always study together, do problems together, chat and hang out together too. So he was like my partner in crime in physics. Long story short, we were so into astrophysics that we were doing like our undergrad, and we had a choice to make for upper division. And he was like, hey, look, we could do a double major in physics. We just have to do another lab course and like a few extra classes. And then I was like, you know what? Let's do it, man. Like, we got each other, like, yeah. So then we agreed to do the double major, and then we definitely helped each other along the way. His name is Nick Koleshnik. And long story short, we graduated with a double major, holding it down for each other. So like some days I would be too sleepy. Like, hey dog, like go to lecture, I'll copy your notes. And then other days he'd be like, hey, I can't go, I'll copy your notes later. And we'd study together, work together, right? I mean, you can't copy each other's exams. So we just work together in terms of doing, solving all our problems together and pushing each other, motivating each other. I think we were both blessed to have that. And then throughout that part of my life, I also did creative writing, a minor in creative writing, which is how I fell in love with poetry. I would have done a triple major if I could, but I couldn't because there was no major for creative writing and poetry. I only had a minor. So I left Cal like that. What's the result of that? Currently, I'm a optical engineer. I work at a biotech company in San Diego. In research and development, I help develop and design optical systems, both in illumination and imaging for DNA sequencers. So anything from figuring out the concept, the optical system architecture, to pushing it into a prototype, doing the test, the characterization, defining the specs, designing, vendor management, and then pushing it into a product that is being, or I designed and helped develop a few products on the market. But yeah, it's all in the biotech space. The physics helped me because I understood it. Once you could speak in physics terms, like not crazy deep, but just like once you could speak in, let's say like, wavelengths and light rays and power output and, optical focal length and this and that, it's like, oh, okay, I could understand it. Like I wasn't an optical engineer by college. It was all mainly theoretical at that time. So that's how I used it. That's how I'm using it to this day. Maybe not astrophysics. So astrophysics was like my first love. Like no one told me to do it. I just kind of fell in love with it. So
yeah. Unless you're Michio Kaku, it's hard to make money in astrophysics.
Yeah. And I felt like to do like grad school, a lot of astrophysics was like programming and hours of coding just to collect data and then make inferences on that. You have to really love it.
So folks, we've got a lot to unpack with this episode, so we're going to take a break, pick up where we left off with Krysada next week. In part 2 of this interview, we'll dig deeper into the artistic side and explore his poetry writing. If you're enjoying the show, do us a favor and subscribe on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify and tell your friends and family about the show. We'd really appreciate that. With that said, if you'd like to get involved with what we're doing here at the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame, send us a message. The response from the community has been overwhelming, and we could really use some help with researching different athletes, identifying podcast guests, writing the stories, video editing, graphic design, you name it, we could use the support. So look forward to hearing from you. Please reach out if you'd love to get involved. Until next week. The C4 podcast is brought to you by the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. Visit us on the web at laoamericansports.com, celebrating the first, inspiring the next.